Hi everyone and welcome to Desteni I Process Live Google Hangout. We do live hangouts every Thursday here on the Desteni I Process channel, and at the moment we are walking a series on the physical body and physical body support from a Destonian perspective. And before we get started, I have to say that it's a disclaimer that we're not medical professionals, we're not doctors or anything like that. So if you do have a medical issue or any form of medical condition, we would suggest that you seek out the help of a professional or the advice of a professional. So we're simply here in our personal capacity, sharing our experiences, our insights and realizations. We do in no way say that you should do what we have done. It's always best to consult with a professional if you do have an issue. In this hangout, we're going to talk about binge eating, overeating, and emotional eating, and why it is that some people have this tendency of overeat, over-consuming food, as well as eating with your emotion. We're going to talk more about what that means. In the hangout, you're able to ask questions. If it's the first time you're watching and you're on the YouTube link, you can click the link in the lower left corner, and it says be part of the conversation, and that will take you to our Google Plus page where you'll be able to type in your question or your comment, or if you want to share an insight you have had about overeating or binge eating, you're welcome to do that, and we will feature your questions and comments throughout the hangout. I'd like to introduce our guests today. We have Roselle with us from South Africa. Hi, Roselle.
Hi, everyone.
And we have Michelle with us, who is from the US, but who is living in Austria now. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Anna. Hi, everyone.
Very cool that you guys could join us. So let's jump straight into it. So I think everyone knows what overeating is. It's basically where you eat more than your body actually needs. But for binge eating, it might not be everyone who knows what that is. So I've looked up a definition here on the Mayo Clinic, and it's basically a serious eating disorder, I'm paraphrasing a bit here, where you consume unusually large amounts of food. And what tends to happen also with binge eating is that you consume a lot of food at once. Too much food or candy or whatever it could be, and it is actually it's both a medical and it's a psychological condition. And then we also have the expression eating your emotions, or emotional eating. And I would like you, Michelle and Roselle, to talk a little bit more about what it means to try and eat your emotions and eat from an emotional starting point. But before we go into that, Michelle, would you like to share a bit about your experiences with binge eating and how it's featured in your life? And then also for you, Roselle, because I know that you guys have different experiences with binge eating, or that you can share different examples where one is more lightweight, you could say, and the other is a bit more extreme. So it's cool to hear those different perspectives that people might not consider, that being a binge eater or an overeater is not always so extreme. It can also be very something that people might not consider to be binge eating or overeating. So Michelle, let's start with you.
Sure. Okay. From what I can remember, it started when I was 16 years old, when I was sophomore year in high school. And I just remember having the habit of coming home after school and simply eating large quantities of food that would bring me comfort. And this happened for about 10 years. So this was quite a big pattern in my life that really took control of me. And it was mostly during my school years, my high school and college years, that it was the most prominent. And I would eat foods that I found comforting. And I didn't realize it until I started to really look into binge eating and myself into why I was doing this, that I realized it was because I felt quite helpless and like not in control of my life in high school and college, just in the school years in general. And I didn't know how to deal with myself and the friends I was with and just like the classroom in general. And I didn't I was quite shy too, so I also didn't join really many clubs, or I didn't do sports. So so because of all of that, because I didn't know how to like really deal with people and just school in general, I would seek so much comfort going home and just eating foods that I found really comforting, like crackers with peanut butter, ice cream, chips, cookies, and so that would bring me the most comfort. It was quite a it was a lot, like many years, 10 years. It was such a huge chunk of my life, and of course I gained a lot of weight from that, and from that became very insecure about myself, and that of course I continued perpetuating the cycle of eating, binge eating, emotional eating, to make myself feel better because because of my weight. So yeah, don't really know how else to what else to say, but I really do link it to not suppressed emotions and not being able to deal with people in my life and school, and just overall feeling helpless in some points. And so food to me, because I had control over what I was eating, that was like my sense of control, if that makes sense. I could use food and eat whatever I wanted in a way that
Yeah.
gave me a sense of power.
Yeah, and we're also going to talk about, or that's actually the primary focus here in this hangout, is the solutions as well as also understanding, like I said in the beginning, why is it that we create such patterns? So it's very cool to have that outline of what does it actually mean practically to be a binge eater. And Roselle, if you could then share your experience with binge eating, because before the hangout started, you said something that I found would to be very interesting, which is you described this like very normal family situation that I think many people can relate to, that probably a lot of people wouldn't consider to be overeating or binge eating. So do you want to share your experience with that? Can you hear me?
Sure. Yeah, so basically obviously coming from, you can see, yes, I can. Obviously you can see from Michelle's experience that she shared, it's a very prominent relationship with binge eating. However, from my perspective, in my life, in my experience, just looking at the family environment, I mean, you learn to eat from the family in the home environment as you grow up, and your kind of eating patterns and habits and behavior around eating is kind of controlled a lot by your parents. Now, my parents, for instance, would always make me feel guilty if I didn't finish my food or if I didn't eat my vegetables, or by using statements such as, there are starving kids in this world, you better finish your food, or your parents would say, that's good for you, this is not good for you, that's bad for you, that's healthy. So, and because you kind of fear standing up to your parents because there's this authority, they have this unspoken authority over you, you kind of just accept and do what your parents, tell you. So basically your relationship with food then already is starting on a very subtle note, starting to be built up from a relationship of fear and a starting point of fear. And, I never noticed these small little seemingly insignificant moments happening throughout my childhood into adulthood, how they actually accumulate and create your relationship towards food. So basically those are things for, if you don't identify with being a binge eater, I would say look at these kind of points. Look at when you overeat. I mean, I've also found myself that when I'm in a very big festive kind of setting where there's a lot of people and there's like food available, let's take a simple example like a wedding or something like that, and there's free food available, I've noticed within myself that there's this kind of compulsion to take more food than I usually would because it's there. And these small little seemingly insignificant things where we kind of, that is binge eating in the moment, where it's also coming from a fear of fear of loss, basically. Like, I'm not going to be able to have it. I need to go and get this food quicker because someone else is going to take it and I can't have more. It's like these small moments, I'm sure, feature in a lot of people's lives that don't identify with a binge eater, but that's binge eating personality type things. And so yeah, you've got the one side of it where it's very prominent, like Michelle's case, where people binge eat to kind of make up for points in their lives which they haven't directed themselves yet, such as not being sociable, feeling less than, judging yourself, comparing yourself, that kind of aspect of it. And then you've got the normal aspect where people don't identify with binge eating. I did also, at a time in my life, it was probably about half a year of my life where I was a very angry kind of person, and I blamed my parents a lot for the situation I was in my life. And I found there as well, I kind of went into the binge eating character a little bit, where I would overeat, and that would kind of give me this positive sensation and positive experience in the moment of eating, because I had all this anger that I didn't want to deal with, and in the moment I stuffed my face with food, it's like that anger just dissipated and I could just enjoy the food. So yeah, you can look at it, practical questions to basically ask yourself in such scenarios is, whenever you're approaching dishing up food in like a wedding scenario or something like that, look at the amount of food that you're taking and ask yourself the practical question: do I really need this? I mean, we never really listen to our bodies anymore when it comes to eating. We completely, like you say, eat our emotions. We eat from an emotional point of view. We eat from our mind. And if there's points, such as Michelle also shared, if there's points that on your reality that are left undirected, then obviously it's like a void, because you're not here with yourself in your body. You are in your mind completely just feeding this energy design inside of you. And that's basically, then you take the physical energy of the food and the earth and the food that the earth provides, and you just keep that energy running as a mind point. So yeah, it's quite a lot of things, dimensions to consider within binge eating, from the extreme to the not so extreme.
Yeah, I find that it's very important what you say about how it has become normalized and it's become part of the culture, which is also why people wouldn't notice it, because it's something that everyone does at the same time. You gather and you eat, and we have advertisements promoting it. We have restaurants, eat all you can eat buffet, for example, and all these things that makes it normal so that you don't notice. And then it's like suddenly you've gained 20 pounds or 30 pounds or kilos or whatever, and you're like, how did that happen? So that's quite interesting. And I can also share my own experience, which was also quite extreme, because I had allergies as a child. I had an allergy towards milk and towards coloring, which meant that my food intake was extremely restricted. I wasn't allowed to have candy or ice cream or chocolate or anything like that. And I remember being 7 years old or something like that, sneaking into the kitchen, stealing an entire cheese or an entire sausage, going off and sitting and eating it. And for me, it became eating, and especially eating things that I wasn't supposed to eat, became a symbol of freedom for me. And I would actually, or freedom, but also kind of self-empowerment, like I can take, like you were saying, Michelle, I can take control over my own life. In a way, it's quite similar to anorexia, which is the opposite, where you don't eat food to control yourself. So I can very much relate to that, and it's interesting to see how it can be less or more extreme, but it's the exact same pattern. So you guys have mentioned this point of wanting control and eating your emotions and the cultural aspect of it, but what else have you guys found, also as you've been walking with Desteni, as to why we create such a pattern, or you were saying a character, like a personality result, that binge eat? Like, what is it that creates or perpetuates such a personality or a pattern within our lives?
Michelle, do you want to share?
Sure. Yes. Okay, what I've found, and I do want to reference Bernard Poolman's blog post on binge eating, that it really does come from family, because when I read that blog post, I could see immediately how the binge eating really essentially started, or it was traced back to a parent of mine who restricted me from eating certain foods because I had some health issues, yet would allow my sister to eat these foods in front of me. And so that definitely took an effect on me because I made it into an emotional deal. I thought that was not fair and would, in a way, spite my mother through eating food, like binge eating food. But
It's the exact same I did. That's fascinating.
yeah, okay, wow. So, yeah, so that's really what happens. Like, you spite yourself, you actually harm yourself when you think you're trying to get back at someone else. It's bizarre.
Yeah. Rosella, do you want to open up the point a little bit more about this point with eating your emotions or emotional eating, and what you've seen in terms of why it is we try and handle or control our emotions through eating? How does that work? Does it work? Can you handle your emotions through eating? You were talking about that comfort and positive experience that you would have when you eat. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, I was going to say that positivity in itself is a complete illusion. Because if you look at what's behind this whole leading up to the binge eating, let me just reference Michelle, what she shared in terms of that one memory, that one point of, around the table and her mom restricting her from eating certain foods. Michelle, in that moment, made it personal, and she created an energetic kind of relationship to that event. So there's already an issue. There's already her relationship with eating there had gone into being made an issue about it. So there's like a conflict relationship regarding eating those certain foods. And there was spitefulness, and there was a lot of trigger words that were mentioned there, like spitefulness, unfairness, feeling sorry for myself, comparison towards sister. So if you just look at that one isolated event and all of the points that are linked into that one memory, now imagine many memories like that over your childhood going into adulthood. They all unconsciously and subconsciously accumulate, and so all of these things are left undirected as memories, and they get stored in your mind, and in a totality they create your whole relationship towards binge eating. So when you are in the moment and in the act of binge eating and you feel better and positive and you have this cool experience, then after the binge eating there comes the guilt and everything. That's just the tip of the iceberg, because that positivity for the moment is just for that moment. You're not experiencing the spitefulness, the unfairness, the comparison, the self-judgment. That moment of binge eating is perceived as freedom because I have control over my life because of all of these situations I haven't had. So it's really important, and that's what's very cool about like the process that Michelle walks and myself as well with Desteni, is where we really go into all of these memories. As an example, that isolated event, how many points are attached to that? So basically bring those points back to yourself, investigate those memories, open up your relationship towards binge eating, because the act itself is just the tip of the iceberg. You need to dig deeper, find the components that make up this design that you've created for yourself and your relationship towards food, because there's multiple layers involved within it. And one cannot really change your relationship towards eating to become supportive and to become a wholesome human being, to put it that way maybe, in relationship to your, food that you eat, unless you actually go and dissect this whole design for yourself by going to each memory, identifying why am I spiting actually myself by binge eating, because I believe that, I don't love myself, or I don't accept myself, or I can't have this food because my mom says so, and so on and so forth. So it's basically just bringing those points back to yourself, and not having them just run rampant in the background of your mind, which accumulate and lead you to this act of binging, so that you can feel reliefs for a moment from all of the stuff that's running in your mind. So that's basically just comes down to memories, because they're all little moments that accumulate into this whole design of binge eating.
So, Michelle, let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about what Russell is mentioning with the design and investigating the design of the pattern and the memories, and how it is that you can actually do that through the Desteni tools and the Desteni process. Can you share a little bit more about the specifics of how you've done? We shared here in the Showcase app, you'll see like a stream of links next to the Hangout if you're on the Google event. And there are a couple of the blogs that you've actually written, as well as the blog by Bernard Poolman that you mentioned previously. So do you want to share a bit about how you've used the Desteni tools to support yourself to actually stop this self-abusive pattern of binge eating?
Sure. So I first like to say that I have not completely walked through this point. I still have more memories to investigate. However, in one of my blogs, I was able to identify the main memories that I could just immediately just throw onto paper. And so within these memories, then, I wrote them out, so I was able to see, where they started from. And then I've been walking the process of taking self-responsibility for myself, basically, and I do that through self-forgiveness, which is within the DIP Lite course as well as the Desteni website. And then also, another thing too is I've been reading a lot of Desteni material. So I was reading Desteni. I was able to learn more about consequences and the physical body, how to take care of oneself. So as I started to read Desteni and apply writing, I started to understand myself more, see the emotions, and from that, I started to get realizations started to come up where I started to see, hey, look, if I eat this, I'm going to feel like this, and this is going to make me gain weight. But then with the weight point, there's emotions attached to it. So of course, one has to look through weight, how one defines their body, weight. So there are many layers to walking the binge eating pattern. And within that, find ways on how to provide solutions for oneself. I was able to do some research for myself and looking at what are some good diets or ways of eating that could support me, and then walking through emotions and family memories and memories with friends. I was able to take back points to myself, see where I was responsible, and then from that I realized how I really am in control of myself and my life and what I decide to do or I accept and allow within myself. So basically, all in all, through walking Desteni and applying writing and self-forgiveness, self-corrective application, finding solutions for myself so I don't repeat the same patterns, because I realize the consequences I'm just harming myself. I mean, and one thing I noticed with binge eating is binge eating doesn't solve your problems. Your problems will continue unless you do something about it. So that was one of the realizations that came forth just simply through writing.
And we've actually done hangouts on how to write yourself out, how to write self-forgiveness, self-corrective statements, and self-corrective application, because if this is the first time you're introduced with these concepts, it might be completely new to you. But we have actually done hangouts on all of these subjects, as well as the point of what it means to bring things back to yourself that Michelle was talking about, which is the point of, for example, stopping the spite towards your mother and thinking that, and that is how the mind works. It really is so absurd that we will think, oh, I will take control over my life by abusing my body. Of course, it's not something that we consciously think, but that's how it basically works. Something else that I would also add in addition to what you mentioned here, that I did with my binge eating pattern was to ask myself, like, who am I as this pattern? Like, who is it that is deciding that I should eat food that I know makes my stomach upset, for example, or I know I will have a stomach ache if I eat this too much? So I started looking at, like, what are my priorities? Like, what part of me is it that is making this decision? Because I would actually like to eat to support myself, and yet I just kept doing this pattern. And so, for example, in relation to freedom, that I was mentioning earlier, that was one of the points that I realized, that I had come to define eating foods that I want to eat as freedom, because I weren't allowed to eat those foods as a child, and so I felt restricted. And so I actually had to sit down and write with myself and ask, but is this really freedom? Is it freedom to force myself basically to eat foods that aren't supportive for my body because of a memory, exactly like you said, Michelle, where I took something personally and made it about, something entirely different? Because what I, for example, realized was that the reason why my food was restricted as a child was in my mother was supporting me. She was actually doing it in support of my physical body, and I could have realized that. I could have considered, well, she's doing it for my sake. It's not because she wants to be mean or she wants to restrict me. And writing that out assisted me to change my priorities and say, okay, but then this is not freedom. Eating food that doesn't support me is not freedom, because it's just like you were saying, Russell, it's just following those memories, living those memories over and over and over again. Or that is not self-control, is another way. So that could be another point, is to look at the words that we've attached to these patterns and who we are within it, and decide, is that who I'm going to be? Is that really giving me something in my life? Did you guys want to add anything to
Definitely.
that? You were away for a moment, Russell.
Yeah, sorry, connection dropped for a moment.
Did you want to add anything, Michelle?
Yeah, I wanted to say that I also realized the same point as you with the mother. My mom, she also wanted to take care of me, but I made it personal, and I didn't see that because I was in emotion. But really, she was restricting these foods because she wanted me to get better.
Yeah, and there are probably also parents that are restricting foods for no reason, where it is unreasonable. But that, again, doesn't justify or validate that we then start abusing our own bodies. I mean, once you look at it in common sense, it's quite ridiculous, of course. But that's how the mind works, and that's why it's so important to write it out and actually see. Aha, okay, so I'm making up these like absurd conclusions in my mind that I'm following, instead of simply being commonsensical.
Yes, exactly.
So let's look at, so how have you guys changed your relationship to food? Like what does it mean to eat with common sense and in support of your own body, and how has Desteni assisted you to change your relationship to food in this context?
I can share some about that because I walked quite a process on redefining my relationship with food from the context of looking at my preferences, because my way of eating was very limited, very mind-based. I resisted a lot of foods and I actually couldn't identify why. It was just like a feeling or a smell or a taste or a memory that just put me off certain foods, which, when I investigated the foods in and of themselves, they were actually very supportive if you understand biology and your relationship of how your biological makeup. So I walked a process of redefining my relationship with food, where I would purposefully eat food without sauces, without all of the things that, kind of make it a cool experience for me, that make it taste nice. And what I found with that is that basically I was working with my mind, because once I removed the emotional aspect and the ideas that I had created and attached to certain types of foods, once I had worked through that, utilizing simple breathing technique and just allowing myself to, in the moment of resistance, just breathe, let go of the resistance, and allow myself to test the food, minus all of the judgments, minus all of the preferences and all of those things. I actually found that I actually enjoyed a lot of very cool, maybe starting point is to, it's exactly the same design we were talking about earlier on with binge eating. You're working with emotions, you're working with the mind. So once you actually work with those points and you sort that relationship out, what you're left with is just you and the food and your body. And from that, a very fascinating thing developed where after I had really debunked a lot of my preferences and things and ideas around foods, I actually started exploring more, and I enjoyed exploring more because I didn't have this like heavy resistance that I was dealing with. I could just test things and then from there decide self-honestly with reality, meaning my physical body, do I like it or don't I? What is my body's response? And one thing I actually found is that I started becoming more aware of my body in the sense that I would have these weird cravings for things. And that was actually my body saying, hey, you need this. You're craving this type of food because you need something that that food gives you. So I more and more became aligned, and it was quite fascinating how it played out. One thing that I also found out when I started listening and basically minus the mind working with my physical is that my body, I found, does not like narchies at all. And I love narchies, but I found in the physical.
So I think we need to give because I think that's a South African word. Is it tangerines?
Yes, tangerines. Yes.
Right.
Similar to tangerines, like a narchie, yes. Or a clementine, I think, is another word for it.
Yeah, we call it clementine.
So basically, I love that. Yeah. But I found once I became more aware of my body and testing things from a physical, what supports my body more than what supports my mind, I found that my body really does not do well with it. I mean, I used to get a lot of bladder infections, and I actually tied that to the narchies, clementines that I was eating. And very other funny things would happen with my body when I eat these things. So obviously I had to in that case, I had to look at itself honestly and say, okay, well, what's best for my body? My body obviously is saying, hey, this is not good for me. So, there I had to sacrifice a mind relationship and an enjoyment for listening to my body. But all of these things only opened up, and I actually only became aware of it once I started working with the mind aspect and all of the things attached to my eating regime. I mean, my whole life I've been eating from the mind to fill some void or to not fill some void, or it's just completely, you're not hearing your body. So once you work with that kind of aspect of it, once you start working and going and introspecting and seeing all of these things for yourself, working with the mind aspect of it, you can really assist and support yourself to really enjoy food and taste the food. And I mean, like eating in itself as well. I mean, how often do we just eat so mechanically? We don't actually taste the food we're eating. We taste it to some extent, sure, but really like eating slowly. Like, for example, when I eat a salad now, I discovered that I've never really consciously eaten a salad. Like, if you just slow down and breathe while you're eating and be here in your mouth, suck the juices from the lettuce, taste the crunches, really take in everything that's happening with the physical. I mean, if you really slow down and take that as your base to really, the physical basically as your foundation to eat from. And if anything comes up, like if you feel a compulsion or some like kind of force pushing you to eat something, then just slow down and just investigate it for a moment. I mean, the food's not going to run away. You're not going to die. What's pushing you? What is this urge? Where is it coming from? Just kind of slow down when you're with food. Give yourself time to chew your food. I mean, a lot of people, another thing that I realized is that I eat very fast. Like my whole life, I would just, even when I'm sitting next to a guy with double the amount of food next to me, I'd be finished, much faster. Like I would be equal to eating like a big plate of food with the guys. And what I realized is once you start really considering your physical and understanding how it works, I mean, you need to chew your food because there's salivary amylase, which is an enzyme that's the first digestion process that takes place. These are all things we don't even consider because we're eating from the mind. We're racing and we're eating from emotion. We're not even considering our bodies and supporting our bodies to best process the substance that we're putting into our body. So yeah, there's many ways you could practically assist yourself. But yeah, definitely start with investigating your relationship with food and, deconstructing everything around just the physical and the act of just supporting your body. Yeah.
Well said, Russell. Yeah. And also, it takes about 15 minutes for the body to feel full. So if you eat everything in 5 minutes, it's going to be, oh, I'm more hungry. And then you can actually have 3 portions, and then you're like, oh my God, I'm so stuffed, because you didn't allow the body to, move with the digestion and feel it. Michelle, we have a question here, and I'm being told that the Q&A app is unfortunately not working. So what I would like you guys to do if you're watching is to place your question in the comment section on YouTube, and then Roselle and Michelle can reply there afterwards when the video is uploaded. I do have gotten a question through here from Malin on Skype. So she's asking, where did you start investigating how to eat in a supportive manner? What information or websites would you recommend to go to for that support that you've tested out yourself? Or if you suggest any other action directions to take on for physical support. Thank you.
Cool. Actually, I mean, pretty good timing, because I wanted to add on to Roselle, and I wanted to say that for me, actually, how I started to kind of change the way I was eating was my physical body started to respond in a way, and I started to react more to foods. And so I was starting to get like really bad digestive problems, and I linked it to my binge eating. And so from figuring out like what is going on with me, it was suggested on Desteni to look at the blood type diet. And so that was actually the first thing that I began to research and look at. And I found that to actually be a pretty interesting and fun process, because I didn't know, for example, that blood type O's are best not to eat wheat and dairy and stuff like that. So, and I found that those are actually the two kinds of foods that gave me the most negative reactions within my body. So that was definitely one diet that I have looked into, and I tested out the foods for myself, and I have found, yeah, that wheat and dairy are definitely not supportive for my body. And I also looked into the raw food diet, the vegan diet, and I did go on a little raw food diet for some time, and found that I was getting constipated, so I didn't do that anymore. So I suggest that one look into the blood type diet, or look into different types of diets that is more towards your biology, your physical body, and that's all I have.
Yeah, the guy that has did the blood type diet, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name right now. D'Amo, is that his last name? Yeah.
D'Amo, yeah.
And he also did another diet where it's more the body type. I haven't actually looked into it, but what I would say as a complete general notion is which is something I often say, is to eat what supports your body, not what supports your belief systems. So your body may be like butter, or maybe your body likes chocolate, like maybe your body, like the opposite of what Roselle was saying, that sometimes you want to eat things that aren't supportive for you. Sometimes you think you shouldn't eat things that actually would be good for you. So what I found to be a very important solution for me is like everything in moderation. There are certain foods, exactly like you, Michelle, I cannot handle dairy at all. I actually had severe hay fever allergies for quite a while, and other symptoms. The moment that I stopped eating dairy, and by dairy I mean milk, I don't mean butter and I don't mean eggs, within a few days my entire symptoms, they were gone. So, and that was not something that I read or anything. I was just, well, actually a homeopath was suggesting it, but it was also deducing, okay, so if I try taking out the milk, what happens? Oh, my symptoms are gone. So maybe the milk was the problem. How about you, Roselle? Do you have any tips?
I can also relate to the dairy thing. I had quite a lot of problems in my life, which I never knew were problems until I joined, living on the Destini farm with a big group of people. And I found that my body wasn't really acting normal in certain aspects. So also I eliminated dairy. I just started with the simple process of excluding 1 point at a time, testing it for a month, If nothing's changed, okay, then I've identified it's not that. Move on to the next thing. Obviously, when you're doing that, the process of removing something from your diet, don't do too many at a time, because then you won't be able to identify which one is the point. But definitely, I would say test things like that. Take away, if it's, things don't change, then, you get in the process of exclusion like that. That kind of worked for me. Another thing that I would say that really assisted me was, and which I really enjoyed, is recently, I think about 3 years ago, I had to do some exams over again, and I did agricultural science and biology again, and I thoroughly enjoyed biology this time around, because I found a new kind of respect and understanding for my body. And when you really go into at a cellular level, like the relationships that are going on in your body just to keep you breathing here, it's vast. So I think, people are not really educated in terms of nutrition and how your body, functions. On very, like, micronutrients, macronutrients. Your body needs certain nutrients to perform certain functions, and every single human physical body is the same in that regard. So I would say also investigate macronutrients, and how and why you need that in your body. What does it do? Look at those functions. It's really fascinating when you start delving into this stuff, but that really helped me to understand, okay, so carrots are good for me because this. If I experience this symptom, it might be a lack of that nutrient. So let me get more of that vegetable in, or that green spinach, or that kind of meat. Let me try that. So this kind of understanding also would assist and support you a lot to align your eating and your relationship to food to be more supportive for your body, rather than, like you say, eating for your belief systems. So I would really suggest to anybody out there, just investigate how the physical body functions, because a lot of us do not know zilch about it. I mean, I only 3 years ago really opened my eyes to, and I just, tip of the iceberg again. It's so vast, but definitely that basic understanding of what kind of foods hold what kind of properties for your body. So understanding can also help guide your choices.
Sorry, there's a bit of a lag here. And to not make it into a religion, because what I was also looking at just now is that sometimes you need some kind of nutrient. Like, I've tried this where I will be completely craving something, like it was plums at a period. And so I was eating for like a week, I was eating plums, and then suddenly, now I don't want to eat it anymore. So I would be considering this point to not make eating habits into a religion, but be really playful, and you were saying, like, almost like scientific, become an expert on your own body from within, as well as reading and understanding how the body works, as well as sorting out and writing out the memories, that you come at it from all kinds of directions, but not to create a religion out of it, but to be here in this moment right now, look at, okay, what would be cool and nice to eat for me now on a physical, practical level. So,
cool.
Definitely.
Guys, Michelle, any last comments or tips that you'd like to share with the viewers before we finish for today?
Yeah,
I would definitely say, if you require any support or assistance with your relationship towards food, whether it's binge eating. I mean, look, binge eating, bulimia, anorexia, there's a very fine line between these designs. I mean, they're extremes far from each other, but they kind of the same similar design in terms of also coming from a mind point. So if you are out there and you need or would like support and assistance, really, I mean, read Michelle's blog. She's written quite a lot about the point of binge eating. Her blogs will, give you and highlight kind of the process that one walks within, Desteni, how you can support and assist yourself. And, ask questions. We do have a forum. Go onto the forum. But definitely this process of introspection, as well as, like Anna said, be playful about the point of experimenting different foods. But, really arrive at that point of being self-aware within your relationship towards food. When you eat, why are you eating? What's pushing you? What are you putting into your body? How much are you putting in? Question, just slow down for a moment and question yourself within these points. And that's all I would share.
Very cool. Michelle?
Cool. Just to add from Roselle, see if you can find, if what are the problems in your life and see how you can direct them, and utilize the forums, utilize Desteni I Process Lite. You get a buddy there who will walk with you and providing additional support, as well as the forums. The forums are awesome for support. So yeah, just see, because for me, like, I didn't know how to direct many things in my life, so it just seemed so overwhelming. Eating just kind of made everything kind of go away temporarily. So see if you can identify for yourself what is really bothering you, what is going on, and then utilize the Desteni tools and the support available to assist you and help you find solutions and direction for your life.
Yeah, and I would add just here in the end that if I can change and stop binge eating, then anyone can stop it. Like, I hated vegetables, and I was very ashamed. I would never have admitted it, but I really hated vegetables, and I thought I could not imagine myself in a million years enjoying eating a vegetable. But I do. I actually do. I have really discovered the wonder that is the broccoli, for example, which I'm very grateful for, because if I hadn't walked through all of this, I would have missed out on the wonder that is the broccoli or the cauliflower, or, like you were saying, Marcel, the lettuce, the succulent lettuce. So definitely there are a lot of gifts in opening yourself up to this point of eating to support your own body. And of course, we will place all the links that Roselle and Michelle were mentioning in the description below the video once it is uploaded on our YouTube channel. Like they were saying, Roselle and Michelle, there is a Desteni I Process Lite course, which is completely free. In that course, you will learn how to use writing to support yourself. Then there's a Desteni forum where you can register and go. There's a thread called Ask a Destonian. So if you do have any questions about your diet or about your body or anything that you're wondering about, definitely suggest to utilize that support that is available from people like ourselves who are walking and have walked this process. So ladies, thank you so much for being here. Really cool hangout. And we will be back next week.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone. Don't forget to subscribe. Bye.
Bye.